Welcome to this module on creative writing. In this introductory module, we shall deal with an essential aspect of creative writing, that is, understanding different genres. Whether you are penning down a novel, a poem, or a screenplay, understanding genres is crucial. Knowing your genre is the key to creating an impactful work because it shapes your audience's expectations and helps you craft your narrative effectively. During the course of this video, we will explore the following aspects. What do we refer to by genres? Identify the major types of genres and discuss how to select the genre that suits your creative aspirations. What are genres? M.H. Abrams, in his Glossary of Literary Terms, defined genre as a term, French in origin, that denotes types or classes of literature. Genres are categories that define the style, form, and content of a creative work. They serve as a guidepost for readers, viewers, and writers, signaling what kind of experience to expect. Imagine picking up a book that promises a thrilling mystery but turns out to be a romantic comedy. You would feel confused, right? That's why genres matter. For example, a thriller promises suspense, while a romance delivers emotional relationships and connection. Genres are, however, not rigid boundaries, but dynamic classifications that evolve with culture and audience preferences. They set the tone and expectations for your audience. Genres aren't exclusive to literature. They extend to films, TV shows, music, and even video games. For writers, understanding these categories helps in meeting audience expectations and innovating within the framework. Now, let us look what are the key features of genres. Number 1, style, tone and writing style. Number 2, form, that is, structural elements like chapters or acts. And thirdly, content, the themes, tropes, and subject matter. In the contemporary context, however, genres have become blurred or are conceived to be more or less arbitrary modes of classification. But generic distinctions are yet an inseparable part of literary discourses. Creative writing is considered to be any writing, fiction or non-fiction, that presents literary works beyond normal professional, journalistic, academic, and technical forms of literature. The main objective of creative writing is to bring in the feeling of immediacy in the reader. Hearing people talk, getting involved in the situation as the characters and narration come alive. A literary genre is determined by literary technique, tone, content, or even the length of the work. Now, let us look at a glance the important genres that come under creative writing. Now, let us discuss some common genres and their defining traits with examples to illustrate. Fiction. So, fiction is an imaginative form of narrative. Works of fiction need not be entirely imaginary and may include real people, places, and events. Traditionally, fiction includes novels, short stories, fables, fairy tales, plays, but it now also encompasses films, comic books, and video games. In this video, we will only look into the traditional forms of fiction. So, types of prose fiction are flash fiction, a work of fewer than 2000 words containing around 5 pages. Next is short story, a work of at least 2000 words but under 7500 words and containing 5 to 25 pages. Novelette, a work of at least 7500 words but under 17500 words containing 25 to 60 pages approximately. Novella, a work of at least 17,500 words but under 50,000 words containing around 60 to 170 pages. Novel, it's a work of 50,000 words or more and containing about 170 plus pages. Epic, a work of 2 lakh words or more, about 680 plus pages. So let us now understand what we refer to by a short story. A short story is a prose narrative that is brief in nature, that which can be read in a single sitting. The characters, setting, and plot of a short story are not fully developed as in case of a novel. Authors famed as short story writers are Edgar Allan Poe, D.H. Lawrence, James Joyce, Sherwood Anderson, Ernest Hemingway, O. Henry, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Herman Melville, Edgar Allan Poe, Nikolai Gogol, Guy de Maupassant, Anton Chekhov, etc., among others. Now let us look into the characteristics of short story. Usually, a short story focuses only on one single incident, has a single plot, a single setting, a small number of characters, and covers a short period of time. Some do not follow patterns set for fiction at all. For example, it may have an abrupt beginning with the story starting in the middle of the action. Now, thirdly, manner of telling. There should be a constant sense of movement. Pauses weaken the tone of urgency in short stories. The story should involve the reader to make it appear that you are talking to the reader. Novel. A novel is an extended prose fiction narrative of 50,000 words or more about realistic characters and events described in fictional form. In other words, novel is, quote, people in significant action, unquote, representing life, experience, and learning. Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, published in 1719, was a path-breaking novel in English literature and was the first major novel of the 18th century. A journalist, Defoe carved sections from the memoirs of Alexander Selkirk into a skillfully essayed out fictional novel. Gothic literary style became popular during the end of the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th century. Tales of Gothic novels deal with horror, despair, the grotesque, and other dark subjects. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart are famous Gothic novels. This literature gave birth to many other forms such as suspense, horror, ghost stories, and mystery. The first half of the 20th century saw an explosion in the development of the field of literature. J.R.R. Tolkien pioneered the modern-day conception of the fantasy genre with his epic, The Lord of the Rings, later followed by Terry Brooks's The Sword of Shannara. The age of science fiction began in the 1950s, while crime novel was established as one of the most popular forms of literature. Minimalism and stream of consciousness narratives became popular in postmodernism. Writers experimented with time and point of view, adding novel layers of complexity and undertones to literature. Magic realism emerged in the second half of the 20th century with Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude. Some common forms of the novel are autobiographical novel, which is based on the author's life experience. Examples of such kind of novel are James Joyce's Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man and Thomas Wolfe's Look Homeward, Angel. Children's novel is written for children. Mark Twain's Tom Sawyer belongs to this category. Characteristics of children's novel are a child character or a character a child can identify with. Theme that is aimed at children. Use of vocabulary and sentence structure available to a young reader. Coming of age story. It's a type of novel where the protagonist is initiated into adulthood through knowledge and experience, often by a process of disillusionment. Understanding comes after the destruction of a false sense of security and innocence. Jane Austen's Northanger Abbey is an example of coming-of-age story novel. Dystopian fiction or dystopian novel is an anti-utopian novel wherein the attempt to create a perfect society, a paradise, everything becomes flawed and devastated. George Orwell's 1984, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World are examples of such novels. The science fiction novel depicts adventures through the use of futuristic scientific technology. Scientific rules or principles or facts are established and the writer gives logical sequences to them as the story unfolds. H.G. Wells's The Invisible Man, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, etc. are few such novels. A sequel novel. It's a kind of novel that incorporates the same characters and often the same setting as a previous novel. Sometimes the events of the previous novel continue, while at times only the characters are the same and the events are entirely unrelated to the previous novel. Examples are Mark Twain's Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Margaret Mitchell's Gone with the Wind. Now let us look into the genre of drama. Drama is represented in performance through its enactment in theatre, performed by actors on a stage before an audience, as we all know. The traditional generic division of drama is between comedy and tragedy. Romantic comedy usually depicts the idiosyncrasy of those who fall in love. A comedy of manners typically uses humor to satirize the behavior and mannerisms of a particular social class. The best known comedies of manners were William Congreve's The Way of the World, Oliver Goldsmith's She Stoops to Conquer. We must also note that William Shakespeare's The Comedy of Errors and A Midsummer Night's Dream are well-known Shakespearean examples of a comedy of errors. Tragedy is based on human suffering as opposed to comedy. The early modern tragedy, Hamlet, that was written by Shakespeare, and the classical Athenian tragedy, Oedipus the King by Sophocles, are among the supreme masterpieces of the art of drama. Now let us come to the section titled Autobiography. An autobiography is a biography written by oneself or sometimes with a collaborative writer. Diaries written for personal reference are a version of the autobiography form. Mahatma Gandhi's My Experiments with Truth is an incredible insight into the life of Gandhi. The term fictional autobiography refers to novels about a fictional character written as though the characters were writing their own biography. Daniel Defoe's Moll Flanders, Charles Dickens's David Copperfield, Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre, and J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye are well-known modern examples of fictional autobiography. Now let us look into the genre of biography. A biography is a description of someone's life told with revelation of impersonal facts that includes education, work, relationships, and death, and the subject's experience of those events, highlighting various aspects of his or her life. An important biography is Plutarch's Life of Alexander the Great. Leighton Strachey, André Maurois, and Emil Ludwig started the new school of biography, featuring iconoclasts, scientific analysts, and fictional biographers. Now let us understand the basic types and characteristics of the genre of poetry. Poetry is a literary form where language is used for its aesthetic qualities to expand the literal meaning of words with specific features such as repetition, verse form, and rhyme. Poetic forms are based on sets of rules of rhyming scheme, meter, and other elements of a poem. Some common forms of poetry are sonnet. It is a poem in a distinctive poetic style of 14 lines, usually in iambic pentameter, with a varied rhyme scheme. The two main types of sonnets are the Petrarchan or Italian and the Shakespearean sonnets. Next, odes. Odes were first developed by poets in ancient Greek, such as Pindar, and Latin, such as Horace. The ode generally has three parts: a strophe, an antistrophe, and an epode. A poetic genre is the classification of poetry based on the subject matter or style. Some common genres are as follows. Narrative poetry. It is a genre of poetry that tells a story and is perhaps the oldest type of poetry. Notable narrative poets include Ovid, Dante, Chaucer, William Langland, Shakespeare, Alexander Pope, Alexander Pushkin, and Alfred Tennyson. Epics, ballads, and metrical romances are examples of narrative poetry. Next is epic poetry. Epic poetry presents in a continuous narrative the life and works of a heroic or mythological person or group of persons. Examples of epic poems are Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, Virgil's Aeneid, Milton's Paradise Lost. Lyric poetry is a genre that portrays the poet's own feelings, states of mind, and perceptions. P.B. Shelley, Tennyson, Hopkins, T.S. Eliot, William Blake, John Keats, William Shakespeare are famous poets of this genre. Verse fable is an ancient literary genre often set in verse that features anthropomorphized animals, plants, inanimate objects, or forces of nature that illustrate a moral lesson. We must also note hybrid genres, that which blends multiple genres. For example, The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. It combines dystopia as well as feminist literature. So, briefly, looking at the importance of genres in creative writing may be summed up as: number 1, audience expectations; number 2, narrative structure; number 3, creative flexibility; and number 4, clarity in themes and tone. Choosing the right genre is both an art and a strategy. Here's how you can approach it. Firstly, genre mapping. Create a genre map that outlines the conventions, themes, and structures of major genres. Secondly, understand your interests. Reflect on the genres you enjoy consuming. If you love thrillers, writing one might come naturally. Thirdly, experimentation and feedback. Writing in different genres can expand a writer's skills and creativity. Genres are more than just categories. They are tools to engage and guide your audience. Whether you are drawn to a single genre or inspired to innovate across boundaries, understanding genres will elevate your creative writing. Thank you for joining us in this session on understanding different genres. As you continue on this journey, keep exploring, keep experimenting, and keep writing. Thank you.